Hey, got another video. I believe it was possibly, oh man, it was like Zionist Watch. They had a video today about Trump. They were comparing him to an old school ruler, and it's directly related to Purim. So I figure I could tell you about that because I think Purim is very important to what's going on. And oddly, this is them comparing Trump deceptively to the ruler before the ruler in the age of Purim. Let's read this. This is from Ahish. It's also repeated on several other Jewish websites. Well, let's go through this. History Crash Course 24, Purim in Persia. A feast celebrating God's abandonment of Israel puts into motion Haman's plot to annihilate the Jews by Rabbi Kinsby-Bra, the old rabbi. So you know, because it's not from a filthy goyim like me, we're going to back this up. The armies of Medes under Darius and the armies of Persia under Cyrus, it is Cyrus who they're comparing Trump to, marched into Babylon to conquer it, I believe. The Babylonian Empire ceases to exist and is now absorbed by the new Persian Empire. So what do we have in the first part of the world, just to keep it straight? First Assyria, then Babylon, then Persia. They were all great Mesopotamian empires, and one after the other, all interacting with the Jewish people. In 370 BC, Cyrus issued a decree allowing all the indigenous people that have been exiled by the now defunct Babylonian Empire to go back to their homeland. One copy of this decree is on display at the British Museum. And although the version did not specifically mention the Jews, hold up, gotta make sure I get up here. One copy of this decree is on display at the British Museum, and although this version does not specifically mention the Jews, they are included as we learn from the book of Ezra. And this is quoted, they're quoting this from the book of Ezra. In the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, upon the conclusion of the Lord's prophecy, by the mouth of Jeremiah, the Lord aroused the Spirit. Gotta turn. Lord aroused the Spirit. He's arising the Spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia. And he issued a proclamation throughout his kingdom, and in writing as well, saying, "Thus said Cyrus the king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth has the Lord God of heaven given to me, and he has commanded me to build him a temple in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Whoever is among you of his entire people, may his God be with him, and let him go to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the temple of the Lord." Ezra 1:3. So, what we have here is, there's more to this article. Maybe we'll get to it. But let's stop there. What we have here on the Zionist Watch channel, they're showing the clip from a Christian broadcasting channel, CBC, I believe it was. And they were saying that Trump is Cyrus. He is building this temple. Now, to me, that's kind of odd because who is Cyrus? Where did his family come from? That's odd. Maybe they're telling us something here. Maybe they're telling us that they also took over Cyrus's family as well. Because the truth is the Purim occultic blood mixing ritual, which is no more than merely mixing bloodlines through sex. They're saying that that he is the king who's going to build Israel. But at the same time, Trump's going to build Israel like this King Cyrus did. But at the same time, Trump's also, if you go by the narrative that we can't prove Trump is Jewish, and one of his early pics in a bathrobe, he looks like someone I know who I was pretty sure was Jewish. But if we go by this narrative that he's not a Jew, they've used the Purim blood mixing ritual to take over his family. And that is more relevant if you ask me. But you're not going to hear them ever mention that. They're going to continue celebrating Purim. They're going to continue telling you who his family is. Well, they may not continue telling you that. Now that a lot of people hate Trump and he's been in power, it does them well to kick him out of their lineage, at least for 40, 60 years, until they can conquer the Goyim, who are getting restless, like they did in Purim. So, they're bragging at first that he's taken over this land, and I've already did a video, and you can already look into what Purim is, and that's where they've taken over his family. Now, in this story of Cyrus, they're talking about God told Cyrus to build this land. And let me tell you, God isn't telling Trump to do anything. If God wanted someone like Trump in office, we're talking about the God of this earth, a degenerate lowlife, and not a God in heaven who created the earth. We're talking about different gods, if anything, here. Because, just look at what he's done. His whole family is non-Republican. It's not Republican material to have a plastic family. Hell, I don't consider myself any part of this stuff, and I consider myself, I probably led a very unstable, not so couth, probably at least partially degenerate lifestyle. Definitely destructive. I'm not sure if people consider destructive degenerate, but I've definitely, and I don't think so much as I've lived degenerate. I have lived destructive of this world, but look at this fucking world. What's going on in this world? The people not trying to destroy this world are definitely either unaware or bad people. If you're born into this world and you're not starting to destroy it, then you've not noticed anything. They haven't came after you yet to teach you anything because they felt you're under control. But the Cyrus guy's claiming God told him to do this. But let's look at Trump's family, right? See, we're gonna compare these things because what happens? What happens in the book of Ecclesiastes? What has been, will be again, and will always be done, right? So we need to look at this, and we need to compare the two together. Who's really telling Trump to do things? Trump's being told by bankers, and he's being told by all these other people what to do and when to do it. He's not being told by God to, blame 9/11 on dancing Muslims, when we in fact have Scott DiCarlo NJPD in New York because they needed overflow cops on 9/11. So he was actually NJPD. A long time ago I mistakenly made a meme and it said NYPD, so I'm correcting that now. We have him exposing that he pulled over Mossad agents. Now there's more than him, but he's the cop. He's the guy you're either going to believe or you're not going to believe in the story about what's going on. There's a lot of hearsay, a lot of people talking this and that, a lot of people here and there, and they're really not telling you. They're not coming from a factual standpoint, a position of authority, where you're going to believe them, where everyone's going to believe them. But we have Scott DiCarlo, NJPD. He's spilling the beans, and now he magically, he's making records in Hollywood. Good for him. Not Hollywood, Nashville would. It's the same people. They've been taken over by the same people I read, and that's very close to impossible not to believe. because everything at this point, and we can say everything now that Rupert Murdoch has stepped down and sold his media empire, we can say everything is controlled by them. Now that Disney was taken over, everything is controlled by them, right? So we have this guy lying about all this stuff. Is God commanding Trump to lie to end up creating Jerusalem? No. There's a little birdie chirping in his ear. And some people are going to claim little birdie is threatening to kill him if he talks or anything like that. And there's an argument to that. If you can compile the complete argument, go ahead and make the video about it. And make sure you include, the takeover of his family in that video. And that'll be a good video. Hell, I can make that video. But someone else can do it as well. So, we have birdies whispering in Trump's ears. That was totally an accident, but not an accident at all. And Trump is he's not thinking for himself. All this stuff he's doing, all these takeovers, all these business acquisitions, I have a feeling he's not really involved in that as much as he'd like to be and like to make you think he is. In fact, there's always the chance in the business world that you are like a front operation for someone who is hiding assets, or is they have too many assets according to some certain laws, monopoly laws or something like that. There's all sorts of reasons why you would hide your assets behind someone else. People do that. Hell, I'm like broke. I don't have any money because I don't care about it. Never had any sort of want to collect it. And even I have people who handle my assets, and I would prefer everything to be handled by someone, although that can get expensive. And at the same time, every time I have someone close to me, at this point in time, there's like no one I freaking trust. Serious. I'm serious. You guys are all probably on here, huh? But too bad. It's really hard for me to trust people. The Uish came amongst my best friends even, and I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to discuss any of this stuff around you, so what's the point here? But we're a little bit off topic. I'm just explaining to you how, how even a simple nobody street urchin, pretty much like myself, can want to have assets somewhere else. So we don't even know if Trump's assets are his, and they're technically not, because they're always bankrupt. That means they're the property of the bankers who own them. So there you go. I just answered the whole question with facts. So when you're filing bankruptcy and all that, when you're taking out mortgages and loans, the people who own that property are really the banks. I mean, that's what you sign on the paper. That is their property. It's saying, hey, we're gonna come get this stuff when you don't pay for it. But they're discussing that shit, and they're leaving out the fact that before they even compared Trump to Cyrus, and this is a Christian network, obviously, these are the new Zionists that have appeared in the last 100 years to take over Christianity. They are lying, and I'm guaranteed $10 million bet they never did a video on the Purim takeover of Trump family. And it's too bad, because it just proves they're lying. It's so easy to catch these people through their omissions when you know what to look for. So on that video, the Christian Broadcasting Channel, this is obviously a Zion network now, and they're omitting stuff and they're trying to manipulate you. If anything, he's a mixture of Cyrus and the later leader. And sorry if I don't know the name right off the top of my head. But what happened is it's quite possible that Cyrus as well was taken over by them. And I mean, why would Cyrus do this? And it's Babylon too. I mean, they're talking about restoring Babylon. And what the hell does that have to do with Christianity praising the restoration of Babylon. What the hell type of shit is that? That's not Christian. Any Christian can tell you they don't want to restore Babylon. Any Christian can tell you that. But when they don't come out and say, hey, we're talking about restoring Babylon, people who don't know this history are going to go with it. They're going to repeat the history when they don't know it. You want me to finish this story up? I'll finish the story, because that's pretty much all there is to it. You got the CBC, they're lying, they're omitting, and they're telling you to restore Babylon, and it's so great. It's like, what the hell type of shit are you going to restore Babylon for if you're a Christian network? Why would you be praising that? So let me finish this story here, straight from the rabbi's mouth, and you'll hear what happened, after Cyrus decided he was going to do this. Now, this isn't from the Bible. This is from the rabbi. The last part I left off at was Ezra 1:3. But we're going back to the rabbi. You would think that the Jews would jump up, pack up, and go. But that's not what happens. Of what is probably 1 million Jews living in the empire, only 42,000 go back. Only about 5% of those that went into exile 70 years earlier go back, and the remaining 95% stays put. The same happened in 1948, when the State of Israel declared. There were about 12 million Jews in the world, and at that time, and only 6 million, or 5%, settled the land. The rest, 95%, preferred to stay in exile. Why? The answer is the same for 370 BCE as it is for 1948, as it is for today. The diaspora is nice. It's comfortable to live in Brooklyn or Los Angeles or Toronto than in Israel. Why move if you have a nice big house in America and a nice standard of living and 2 cars, and you have nice day schools? The attitude is repeated in Jewish history, and it is a problem, because God might give the Jews a little breathing space in diaspora from time to time, but in the long run, he's not going to allow them to stay there. This article is loaded if you know what's going on. It's loaded with deceit, and that's one way you're going to be able to look at this and tell that there's something up with all this story. I mean, the story there, even the CBC's relating to this story, and there's something up with the story they're relating to, yet alone with the CBC. But also at the same time, they're lying about what happened and how they got this power. God didn't give it to them. They took over the ruling elite families. It's not a great place for them to live, but they're not going to be allowed to live there anymore. It's a great place that they've taken over, and they're not going to be allowed to take it over anymore. That's what's really going on. So when I read these articles, I have a video I've not released because I go into detailing who all the magicians are, and I go to the Jewish sites to help you understand, and it sounds so great. It's great. It praises them up and down. But in reality, we know that much of this praise is a deception itself as well. So back to the story. One of the great patterns we're going to see over and over again is the higher the Jews rise in the diaspora, the lower they fall. The nicer the diaspora seems to be at first, the worse the subsequent reaction against the Jews. We see it in Egypt. Jews are invited in, they do well and prosper, and look what happens. They end up slaves. We see this in Spain. We see this in Germany. All the places that once loved and welcomed the Jews eventually turn on them. Therefore, Jews make a mistake if they ever think that the diaspora is home. It never works for long. Israel is the only home for the Jews. Let's stop there for a second. What we have here is they're saying that the places once loved and welcomed the Jews and eventually turned on them. Let's look at America, for instance. What happened early 1900s and right before that? Technically, when you're talking about these centuries, I believe you used the previous year's wording, but I'm not sure why that. I mean, Obviously it's because the way time is organized, but time's all fabricated and all changed. The Jews know that. It's like 5,776. It's not 2000 BC for them, or 2000 AD for them. So around that time, the Jews were not welcome in America, and they weren't allowed to just flood in from Germany, even though they were prepping, war and all this. They weren't allowed to come really wanted anywhere. They brag about that in the movie Hollywoodism. They say, oh, dude, they didn't want us in their country clubs and all that, so we had to create our own. But what we've really had at that point in time is we had Israel Zangwill, the writer of the play called The Melting Pot. And see, that wasn't an American who wrote that. That was a Jewish who wrote that. And that was the beginning of some of their propaganda. And then it goes into Jewish-linked songs like This Land Is Your Land. Woody Guthrie, who said a lot of his influence came from some of his Jewish family. And then we have Emma Lazarus, who, this was later, information was added to, her poem was added to the Statue of Liberty. After the Statue of Liberty was brought over by the French, they basically vandalized it and put their words on it. So, they're lying about this from the start as well. Apparently, they brag themselves. They weren't welcome here. And then that's why Israel Zangwill had to create stuff like the melting pot. The phrase that everyone knows came from the play. And obviously that's a Jewish because his name's Israel Zangwill. But you can also look at him and tell that's a Jewish. And there's probably just so many more links that he's Jewish besides admission and all that you just know that's a Jewish. And it was if you read enough stuff, if you read enough of their back and forth, you'll know that was a deception. And Protestant America wasn't really welcoming other people into their nation they were building up. The Protestants, some claim, and you're just speaking with someone the other day I met, and they claim that, the Protestants are the hardworking people who built the nation, and they're probably right on that. And so I told him, I was like, hey, look, the Supreme Court doesn't have a single Protestant on it anymore. It's half Jews, half Catholics. And so we're going to get back on track here. I was just pointing out, when you're reading their stuff, you have to know different sources because they're going to come at you with the brainwashing real fast. Everything's good and great if they want it to be good and great in your mind. And that right there contradicts everything they've come with. And I don't believe America really was a melting pot when they invented that as well. They wanted to set the ball rolling. They wanted to drop the lingo out there. They wanted the play to get out there. Which, that makes you wonder, were the playhouses owned by Jews? Someone should look into that. You know what? We all know the answer to that by default is yes. And you got to prove otherwise. So, that's something to look into. Let's continue on. Let's finish this up. That really is where a lot of this was going to end, but I'm going to finish it up. Maybe we'll find some else in here. 42,000 Jews that go back to 370 BCE immediately start rebuilding Jerusalem. And of course, the first thing in Jerusalem that they want to rebuild is the temple, because a Jew can't live a complete Jewish life without a temple. The Samaritans, who never liked the Jews and who hate this new influx, immediately send a message to Persia demanding that the Jews be forbidden to continue building. They say that if the Jews are allowed to rebuild the temple, they're going to rebel. And as a result of their threats, Persia freezes the building permit. For 18 years, no construction is allowed. And it's daring. They just started that sentence with the word "and." What type of writer is this? And it's during this period that the Purim story related to the book of Esther takes place, as I said. Meanwhile, back in Persia, a new king has replaced Cyrus. His name is Achashverosh, and he is married to Vashti, the sole survivor of a bloodbath in the royal palace of Belshazzar during the Persian invasion, as noted in part 23. Achashverosh throws a party reminiscent, that's Achashverosh, might be pronouncing that wrong, throws a party reminiscent of the one that Belshazzar had thrown some years before. He too had been calculating, and he had decided that the 70 years allotted in Jeremiah's prophecy for the Jews to regain the land of Israel was up. In truth, Jeremiah prophecy mentions 70 years in different contexts, one referring to when God would remember Jerusalem, another one when God would redeem Jerusalem. The first 70 years, counted from the initial conquest of Judea, was up when the Jews were allowed to return to the land. The second counted from the destruction of the temple. We will not be up for another 14 years when the temple will finally be rebuilt. Keep that in mind. Let's go back real quick. What date is that? 14 years from... I love when they don't date their articles. That's great. 14 years from somewhere around now, they have it planned to have this complete. And this was probably written a few years back. So give it, you got 10 years or less to figure it out, Goyam. So let me get back on track here. To this feast, Achashverosh invites the Jews, and unbelievably, they come to celebrate their own end. This gives you an idea how far gone were the Jews who opted to stay in the comfort of the Persian diaspora. They used before they had sat by the rivers of Babylon and wept. They had gradually adopted to the comforts of exile, to the point they gradually developed into a positive enjoyment of the pagan way of life and its pleasures. So deep was their desire to fit in that these Jews could actually toast their own public humiliation. Interesting, the Jews are telling us that it was the pagans who decided it was time for them to go for their actions. After some drunken revelry featuring, yet again, the temple vessels, the king orders his wife to appear wearing nothing besides a royal crown. She refuses to come, and he has her executed. Okay. This is the story of Purim, and this is before Purim happens, why he needs a new wife. And think about how degenerate that is right there. You want your wife to dance nude for everyone, and she won't, so you kill her. That is degeneracy at its finest. And then so he marries a Jewish, and then he collapses the nation who was about to expose. They were taking over. It was already working on that stuff. And that's Trump. The Purim ritual enacted on Trump, Le Pen, that's the type of degeneracy it takes to get into these positions, apparently. Queenless, the king sends his scouts to round up all the eligible women in the land. And this is how Esther gets nabbed for the palace. No one knows she is Jewish, and her uncle Mordecai tells her to keep her identity secret. The king falls in love with her, and then, from among all the women taken to the palace, Esther becomes queen. Again, we're talking about God chose them to do all this. This whole story is about God's in complete control, and they can do what they want. You'll see here in a minute. And instead of this being God, this is a whore. This is a degenerate sent to sleep with people to take over their nation. And it's reflective of what's going on in Trump. I mean, look at him. He's ordering mail order brides. How does he know anything about them? He doesn't. And why can't he get a white American woman? I understand. I can't get one. They don't like me. I'm not rich. I'm not, I don't have enough to offer them. Yeah, I dress real nice. It's cool. I play these games with people where I play the game with the world, not people, the ebb and flow of the universe. And one of those games is I dress fancy and I dress rich. I look rich. So I think that everyone kind of worships you when you do that. And that's the point is I want to get my way and get the fuck away from these people. I understand that they're slime balls. I understand that anyone who's like, oh, look, you're fucking rich is a slime ball. You know, someone pulls up in a Lamborghini, I barely even check it out, even though I love Lamborghinis. You know what I'm saying? I don't care. But the average people, especially a lot of white women, they're freaking degenerate like that. So, you know, I understand. I can make excuses for why he can't get an American woman, but he can. I mean, he is rich. He's buying these fucking mail order brides. He can buy an American woman, but he's not. He's going as degenerate as he can, and who knows where these people he's coming from, come from, and who knows their background. He probably doesn't know. No one around him knows. You know, I'm assuming people around him know. And in fact, they might be being placed into his life, which is something I've thought sometimes, especially with my health acting up each time a new person's been placed into my life. But at the same time, I kind of researched one of the last ones, and they had a very German name when I dug stuff up. But we all know who came from Germany, don't we? They look pretty freaking German. Okay, so, blah, blah, blah. This is in quotes. Someone will read it like I did. The Book of Esther is best read with the commentary from the Talmud's tractate Megillah, Megillah, because there are a lot of fascinating details to the story that are left out from the simple telling. However, these details are beyond the scope of a crash course in Jewish history. For more, aish.com Purim site. So I had to save that because I'll probably have to read that. I have to read everything. Haman Amalekite. Achashverosh's top minister is a man named Haman. Hey Agagi. If that rings a bell, it should. Well, that's what they're saying. But if that rings a bell, it should, because I already posted a video on Purim and the takeover of Trump. He was the king of a nation, Amalek, whom King Saul neglected to kill as commanded. Haman is an Amalekite, and he harbors a pathological hatred of the Jewish people. Because he's a filthy goyim. They just freaking hate Jews. You know, no reason at all. It's not because they're marrying into your leaders and taking over your nation. It's got nothing to do with that. Of course not. The Palestinians don't hate Jews for any reason. They're just... The Palestinians have been traveling across the globe trying to exterminate the Jews for billions of years, right? And so it comes to pass that Haman gets the king to agree to issue a secret decree to annihilate the Jews of Persia on the 13th day of the Hebrew month of Adar. And how? They're beginning the frickin' sentence again with and. What is up? I mean, how are you going to be a historian and begin all these... They begin the whole freaking paragraph with and. Oh my Jesus. At least hire a literate person to fucking brainwash people, right? And how he decides on the best date for genocide is very interesting. Haman throws lots, called Purim. Why? It's part of the Amalekite ideology that everything is random occurrence. Everything happens by chance. There's no God running the show. It's the ultimate denial of reality. Yeah. The ultimate denial of reality is blaming God for what you are doing when you send whores to take over nations and have degenerates sleep with these whores so they can run the nation and be the same bloodline. So this holiday, which is called Purim, chance, comes to illustrate that, in fact, nothing happens by chance. From the point that Haman throws the lots, flips the dice, so to speak, everything begins to flip on him. Yeah, okay, so they're saying nothing happens by chance, and it's all God. Okay, something's going on in this world, and let me tell you who's doing most of the something. The Jews are doing most of this, and they're scapegoating God. I mean, you could see from this article is like half scapegoat of God. They're just like, oh, God told me to do it. Next thing you know, when they're raping children, they probably already said that, right? I'm sure that's exactly why they do it. They say, oh, let's cut the baby penises for God. Let's cut baby penises for God. Let's lick baby penises for God. Oh, if we have sex with a 4-year-old woman, God said it's fine. Because she'll grow back into a virgin. No, she'll be trash. She'll be loose. She'll be mentally damaged. That's one of the worst things. I was with a beautiful woman. Or I had a beautiful young lady. I'd like to call her a girl, but I'll be a little more respectful. Try to get with me. I wanted nothing to do with someone a little bit younger than me. Really, I just felt that they would be a little too ignorant for someone like me who's born an adult. And they didn't necessarily show signs of being some sort of prodigy either. But it was fucking kind of sick to me thinking that I was even questioning, like, is this person even 18? Because, 18-year-olds don't look 18 unless they're women trying to be whores, trying to look like they're 30. And that was weird, but damn, these people are talking about sex with 4-year-olds and stuff. And they're scapegoating God for it. I gotta have sex with a 4-year-old for God. No, you don't. Expecting honors from the king, Haman finds himself forced to bestow these honors on his arch enemy Mordecai. Invited along with the king to the queen's feast, Haman is preening with pride, only to discover that the queen is Jewish. Here we go with the "and" again. What type of illiterate language is this? Is this part of the Hebrew you're allowed to? I always kind of thought maybe we should be allowed to begin the sentence with "and," but I believe there's rules for it, because you simply don't need "and" over and over and over. "And's" a continuation, and a sentence, a period, is the end. And after that, it'd be like you just keep running on. Yeah, I do that sometimes, but I'm not writing frickin' history. Or am I? And that now he is accused of plotting to murder her along with the people. Begging for mercy, he throws himself onto the queen's bed, only to be caught by the king in this precarious position and accused of attempted rape. What the hell happened there? That's something else. I'm not even going to talk about that. But that doesn't sound like anything a sane person who has become aware would do. Throw himself on the bed of a woman. That is a little degenerate itself. So I'm wondering, that makes me wonder what really happened. How did he end up on this bed? And this is probably the real reason he's getting executed, as opposed to talking to the ruler and saying, hey, your wife is working with these people taking over our nation. And where, you could talk to Donald Trump about that, and if he's not one of them, he'd probably be like, yeah, that is weird. They're taking over my family. I mean, any normal person would be if you educated them. And you've seen that happen. Things couldn't possibly look worse for Haman. And then comes the clincher. Having erected a gallows for Mordecai, he finds them put to an unexpected use, and he himself is sentenced to death. And the Jews, and whom he wanted to wipe off the face of the earth rather than being annihilated, are given the king's permission to annihilate their enemies. The most fascinating thing in the book of Esther, which relates to this incredible story, is that in the entire text of the name of God is never mentioned. We learn from this that after the destruction of the temple, the presence of God was concealed in the world. Yeah, it makes you wonder who God is if they're being concealed in this world, and who's really running, at least this God on earth. I think there's something other than God, and there might be gods or minions running this earth. But we could still see the God act